I plated 2 bowls of blue corn fettuccine with roasted piñón pesto and set them on our porch table, the one that looks west over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Candles, a linen runner, the sky, all peaches and bruises, our 5th anniversary. My phone buzzed. Subject: scheduled message. Please read at 7 p.m. The timestamp matched the second hand. I tapped. Raya, I can't do this. I moved out today. Papers are en route. It's better this way. The doorbell rang. The courier said my name without meeting my eyes. The candles guttered, and somewhere down our street a dog barked like it knew something had died. Beat. I lifted 1 fork, ate alone, and let the night tell the truth. Before I tell you how one scheduled email detonated my life, do me a favor. Tap subscribe and the bell. It tells YouTube this story matters, and it tells me to keep going. Ready? Let's talk about the night he scheduled our goodbye. My name is Raya Mendez. I'm 34, and until last month I was a museum registrar at a small but proud gallery that preserved northern New Mexico's art. Santos dark as walnut hulls, tin work that caught light like a whisper, pottery with fingerprints still living in the coil. I liked order, provenance, the paper trail that tells you where a thing has traveled and who loved it enough to keep it whole. When my mother died, I kept her mixing bowls labeled, wrapped, stacked, as if good archiving could out-argue grief. I met Colin Drake when I was 29, during a wildfire relief fundraiser. He was 35 now, 30 then. Regional operations for a solar company, suntanned, persuasive, the kind of man who could spin drought into promise. He remembered my favorite pan dulce after one conversation. He called my slow, careful way, steady water, cutting canyons. We married in a tiny adobe chapel with vigas spidering across the ceiling like old roots. Our vows were simple because I believed simple is strong. For a while, we were good. Quiet coffee, weekend hikes, thrifted furniture we refinished together. We told friends we were building. But the red flags didn't wave. They breathed. A comment about my museum salary versus his scaling trajectory. A joke about how art people never fight for raises. A sigh when I spent Saturdays throwing clay at the community studio. It's a hobby, he'd say. You don't have to get lost in it. When my director retired abruptly, I was tapped to serve interim. I thought Colin would celebrate. He blinked once and said, "Are they paying you director money or director responsibility?" The sentence cut 2 ways. I told myself nuance is adulthood. I told myself we were tired. When our gallery funding got slashed, I left the job I loved with a box of labels and a knot in my throat. I pivoted, turned my hobby into a small business. Mesa Lark Ceramics, morning kiln, afternoon glazes, evenings on the porch proofing online listings. It didn't make Colin smile. He started coming home later, smelling like a cologne I didn't recognize, and a hotel lobby I couldn't afford. I am patient. I told myself you don't throw away a vase because it's spidered. You kintsugi the crack. Fill it with gold. Call it beautiful because it survived. I didn't know some vessels are designed to burst. The anniversary dinner happened because I believed, no, because I wanted to believe. I made our favorite pasta from scratch, set out the cobalt plates we'd bought in Chimayo, pressed linen napkins, cued our song. At 7 p.m., my phone told me the marriage ended, automated, scheduled, like a bill payment. I stood so still I heard the Chile Ristra creak in the breeze. Then the doorbell. Courier with a manila envelope and the stunned face of someone delivering a grenade. Inside, divorce papers, a notarized list of assets we should keep separate to avoid contention, and a short letter. I've resigned. It's time. I've outgrown this life. He had cleared half the closet. I checked. His boots were gone. The framed photo from Abekiu, gone. Drawer handles still warm. I dialed. Straight to voicemail. I tried his work email. Undeliverable. Out of curiosity, or masochism, I called his boss's line. The assistant paused before saying, "Colin stepped down last week." He mentioned, "Relocation? Relocation? To where? With what money?" The next morning, our neighbor Miguel watered his marigolds and couldn't meet my eyes either. "Moving truck came Tuesday," he said finally. "I thought you knew." He said you were at a workshop out of town. I swallowed gravel. "I was throwing pots in the studio 6 blocks away." Miguel winced. "Raya, I'm sorry." My hand shook as I logged into our shared savings. The balance was whole. He hadn't touched it. Not out of mercy, I realized, but because he'd opened a new account I knew nothing about. A paper I hadn't signed yet. His list suggested we sever. No quarrel. No mess. He wanted out clean. My phone pinged again. Aunt Lola asking if we were still coming for Sunday pozole. I typed yes, then backspaced. She always said I treated my feelings like museum artifacts, cataloged, shelved, preserved where nobody could trip over them. I laced my shoes. I walked to the studio. I kicked the wheel hard enough to hurt, and when the clay collapsed, I pressed it back up, coaxing it taller than yesterday and truer than last year. A vessel that refuses to die learns its own name in the dark. I didn't find Verity Lang by sleuthing. She found me by algorithm. 2 days after scheduled goodbye, my Explore feed filled with a Santa Fe hotel opening, all gold taps and desert palms, that Verity soft launched with a video of clinking glasses and the caption, "New chapters deserve new views." In the background, Colin, angled, blurred, unmistakable in that navy shirt he bought for our 3rd anniversary. Verity is the kind of beautiful you can zoom in on and never find a seam, the kind that looks expensive because it is. 33 lifestyle influencer turned hospitality investor, old Santa Barbara money, a jawline that won arguments, a smile like a white paper. In her highlights, a repost. He said he chose sunshine. I said, "You finally learned to choose." The comments bloomed with champagne emojis and that sub-tweet prayer. May we all find the courage to leave what no longer serves. I clicked on one photo, and my stomach sank. The Sweets lamp, my lamp, the vintage brass I'd restored, stood behind Verity's shoulder like a trophy. He had taken our things. He was building a life with borrowed light. At 9:23 p.m. he texted, "Not apology. Logistics. Colin, I'll come by for the record collection. Please leave the key." Me, "We don't have a spare." Colin, "I made one." I could hear my mother's soft disbelief. Mia, "You always labeled the boxes." He labeled an exit. At Aunt Lola's, the pozole steamed and the windows fogged. I told her everything. She sliced a lime in 2 and said, "He didn't fall out of love. He fell into ease." That's different. She touched my knuckles. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to keep breathing," I said, "and I'm going to throw clay until my hands remember who I am." "Good," she said, eyes flinty. "And when he knocks, you'll remember your spine is not a drawbridge." The knocks came faster than I expected. A week later, my phone flashed with a photo texted by an old coworker. Colin and Verity. Courthouse steps, small ceremony. Caption, "Sunset vows, sunrise hustle." The same day, a tag surfaced. At Verity Ling in a bridal jumpsuit. Married on a Wednesday, because why not? In the comments, someone asked if a baby was next. Verity answered with a coy love heart. I threw a cup. It came out thin as a secret. If grief is a crowded room, Eli Navarro walked in without a trumpet. I knew him 15 years ago as the debate team kid who stuttered until his argument found rhythm and then turned mesmerizing. He left for Seattle, came back with lines at his eyes and a voice that lived on late-night community radio, KDES 92.3, the station that plays more silence than ads, and introduces artists by first name like they're cousins. He appeared at the community kiln with a box of mugs that leaned left. "If I sell these, Do I have to confess they're socialist? He asked, and I laughed for the first time in days, an ugly, grateful sound. He looked at the clay on my wrists. You always wore better jewelry, he said softly. You okay? I didn't know how to answer, so I told the truth. My husband left me with a scheduled email. He flinched like I'd put a cold hand to his neck. That's cruel. He said it's better this way. For him, Eli said. For him. We worked in companionable quiet, the wheel humming. He told me the radio station needed local voices. Come read a list of the markets and the moon phases, he said. Come talk about clay. I told him I didn't want to be heard. Then come be held by sound, he said. Sound holds without asking questions. I went once, planning to vanish after. I read a recipe for Macacious bean pots and announced the Saturday farmers market. We played a track from a violinist who moved to town after a divorce and now busked under portal shade. It felt like throwing a pot. Center, speak, lift, breathe. At home, I slept. The lamp I loved did not glow in my room. In that emptiness, I noticed how quiet the house could be when it wasn't bracing for his key. Mini cliffhanger. Verity's pregnancy announcement. A stage still of 2 white-soled sneakers, a pair of tiny booties between them. Growing our sunshine. The comments rained. I closed the app. I opened my kiln. Inside, a tray of mugs with constellations scratched into the glaze. I held one that said, "Believe in the dark." I didn't, yet, but I wanted to. The first crack showed up in Verity's comments. A DM screenshot circulating on snark accounts. Fans asking if she'd rebrand after the baby. One wrote, "Will you freeze the nose shape so the gene pool cooperates?" Cruel, but Verity replied with a smiley, then quietly deleted the thread. I didn't feel smug. I felt tired. A month later, Colin texted a photo of Elise, my name still listed as an emergency contact on his old address. He needed me to sign a release for something with our previous landlord, so he wouldn't be stuck paying 2 places at once. It's time-sensitive. I stared at the screen, then at my Aunt Lola, who was layering tortillas and cheese into a casserole with the gravity of surgery. If you sign, it saves him time, she said. If you don't, it costs you headspace. Which currency do you prefer? Headspace is expensive, I said, but so is convenience for men who assume it. I can drop it off to the landlord, she said. He's my bingo partner's nephew. We laughed as always, then fell quiet. She said, "You don't owe him a shortcut through your life." I wrote back, "Have your landlord send me the release directly." He tried to pivot. You know, Verity's family is very well connected. If you needed help placing your ceramics in the hotel, and there it was. The trade. Access for silence. Generosity for compliance. I typed, "No thanks." He sent a single thumbs up, as if I were a vendor. That night, Eli played Townes Van Zandt on the air and told a story about a woman who started walking one day and didn't stop until the border because she wanted to learn what her legs were for. I washed clay from my hands and realized the water ran clear. Babies call forth people's truest selves. Verity's birth announcement looked like a perfume ad. Soft focus, silk robes, a caption about gratitude, purpose, and 10 perfect fingers. The baby was gorgeous in the way all babies are. New and a little startled, a human question mark. The next week, a brittle rumor. Verity's mother had made an unkind comment about inheritable aesthetics at a private brunch. A server shared it. The story slid around town like a glass on a slick bar. Trashy to pass it on, but people did. I didn't wish harm. I didn't want them to suffer. I wanted distance, a life that did not require me to keep flinching. I poured everything into Mesa Lark ceramics, a limited run of story bowls etched with fragments of overheard Santa Fe conversations. I sold out on a Saturday under the portal, sweat in my bra and clay under my nails, and I felt alive. A tourist asked if the bowls were dishwasher safe. So am I said, and she laughed so hard she bought two. Eli found me at the end of the day, handed me a bottle of water that tasted like miracle. There's a show next week, he said. Local voices. Come read a piece about your pots. My pots are shy, I said. Then I'll speak for them, he said. I'm good at narrating small courage. I smiled, and to my own surprise, said yes. We walked home through the violet hour. He asked no questions about Colin or Verity, just matched his steps to mine. On my porch, he touched the edge of a planter I hadn't filled yet. You'll know what belongs there, he said, and left me with the moon steadily minding its business above the cottonwoods. Then Colin called. Not text. Call. Hey, he said like a neighbor. You got a minute? No, I said, but I didn't hang up. Old habits. I need your help, he said, and the we in his voice made my ribs stiffen. Verity's family's fund is doing a second property. There's a timeline glitch with one of my old non-compete clauses. If you sign this affidavit about dates, just clarity stuff, it keeps me clean. Otherwise, he trailed off. It could get sticky. You don't want that either. I want to not be involved, I said. That's what divorce is for. It's a courtesy, he said. One adult to another, one season to the next. I pictured him on a balcony, phone at his ear, eyes on his reflection. Email me the document, I said. I'll review it. Thanks, Raya, he said, soft relief leaking through. We're all trying to move on. I am, I said, and hung up. I sent the document to Aunt Lola's lawyer friend, who read it twice and said, it's not clarity, it's cover. He misrepresented his end date to his new backers. Your signature would retroactively pretty it. My stomach went cold and then very, very hot. I texted Colin. I won't sign. He called. Don't be petty. Don't be fraudulent, I said. He exhaled through his nose. This affects Verity, too. She made choices, I said. So did you. He switched tactics. You always were more reasonable than this. I always was easier to manipulate than this, I corrected, and ended the call. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and sat at the wheel for hours, pulling a vase taller than my forearm, lips so thin I could hear it ring when I flicked it. It stood like a spine. The next morning, I woke to a DM from someone I didn't know, a concierge at Verity's hotel. Not to get involved, she wrote, which means she intended to, but Colin's been here with a guest twice this week. Different from the wife. Just girl code. My hands didn't shake. They didn't do anything at all. Eli showed up with coffee and a new song stuck in his head. I told him I needed to not talk about it, and he said, I can be quiet with company. And he was. He sat at the far wheel and made a lopsided bowl, and when it collapsed, we both laughed with deep relief. That afternoon, Colin arrived at my porch without warning. He looked thinner, expensive, tired. You blocked me, he said. I curated my piece, I said. Look, I messed up the dates. It's not a betrayal, it's bureaucracy. He held out a stack of papers. I need your signature. I didn't take them. Do you remember our 3rd anniversary? I asked. You said we'd always eat on the porch until the mountains ran out of sunsets. He blinked. Raya, be serious. I am, I said. That was the last time you meant a promise. He put the papers on the table anyway. If you don't sign, I could lose equity. If I do sign, I lose myself, I said. He shifted. Verity's family is nervous. They could make trouble. I don't belong to them, I said. I don't belong to you. For the first time, he looked truly at me, not at my usefulness. You've changed. No, I said. I stopped editing the parts you didn't like. He picked up the papers. You always were stubborn. I always was steady, I said. You mistook it for softness. He left without slamming the door, which felt more final than if he had. The twist isn't that I caught him cheating again. Everyone in a glass hotel sees reflections. The twist is that 3 months earlier, before any of this detonated, I'd signed a lease for a sunlit studio in a row of old storefronts near the rail yard. I couldn't afford it then, but I wanted to stretch into who I might become. The landlord agreed to a delayed start, and I had quietly saved deposit and first month from my Saturday sales. When Colin left and moved into Verity's world of gold fixtures, he reached out to a mutual friend about subleasing a little artist space near the rail yard for storage and a side hustle, something about maker content. He was trying to borrow authenticity like he had borrowed my lamp. The mutual friend called me, laughing sadly. "He wants your unit number." "He can want," I said. "The lease is in my name." The key is in my hand. I moved in the following week with Aunt Lola, carrying a cactus and Eli carrying a thrifted radio. The room smelled like dust and premise. The window was a rectangle of late light. I put my wheel by the glass, my table by the outlet, my heart near the door, where I could watch people come in and learn the shape of my life. I hung a sign, Mesa Lark Ceramics and Small Courage. On opening day, the first customer was a woman older than the hills who ran her finger along a bowl's rim and said, "You make things that remember water." I sold 3 mugs and 1 vase. I kept the tall spine vase for myself. That night, Eli played my radio segment, me reading a little essay about clay that collapses and what it teaches your hands about not panicking when the center shifts. The phone line lit up like someone had finally said the unnamed thing. Verity posted less. When she did, her eyes looked far away. A friend of a friend said Colin was consulting, but mostly not. The hotel's second property stalled. The fund issued a polite statement about realigning timelines. Santa Fe kept being Santa Fe. Lavender, tourists, locals who could tell the rain by smell. I didn't watch their lives unravel. I minded my kiln. When Colin texted months later, "I owe you an apology," I exhaled and set my phone down on a folded towel like it was a fragile thing. I typed, "I accept for me, not for you. Take care." Then I blocked the number and felt the complicated relief of a knot loosening. Aunt Lola came by with bizcochitos and a question about a glaze recipe. We sat on the studio floor, our backs to the white wall, the radio low. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel less borrowed," I answered. Eli walked in later with a potted rosemary and a grin that had patience in it. He can make a home out of a pause. He doesn't fill silences that don't ask to be filled. He touched my wrist, a brief hello, and the world didn't tilt dangerously. It settled. We are careful, kind, and slow. Not a rebound, not a rescue. Just 2 people who like the sound of the same morning. One evening, I carried the tall spine vase to the porch. The mountains were their old, benevolent selves. I poured water in, and it sang a little. On a whim, I set a single sunflower in it, and for the first time in a year, I liked the reflection in my window. I still label my boxes, but I stopped cataloging my worth. Some vessels shatter to end a story. Mine cracked to let light in. If this helped you breathe a little easier tonight, share it with someone who needs the same reminder. And if you're staying, I'd love your company. Open the Flame and Fate playlist and binge the next chapter. I'll meet you there.